I know a woman who, about a year ago, thought everything was fine in her life. She said so. But then she learned about real love. And now she's learning to practice it in her life. Now she is seeing things she never did before, back when she thought things were fine, because fine really means nobody's dying and I can make my house payment and the house isn't on fire. She's feeling pain now she never did, because ironically, now that she's loved, she feels safe enough for the old pain to surface. I'm going to repeat that. This is one of the big reasons people don't stick with real love. They feel pain while they're learning it, and because they're seeing things that they didn't see before, facing truths, unearthing childhood pains, blah, 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 that have always been hidden. And as soon as they feel the pain, poof, they're gone. Because their entire life to that point has been about decreasing pain. It's like the great deceit on the planet that diminished pain is happiness. We've come to redefine it. Or that excitement is happiness. If I wanted to completely screw up this world, let's just assume for kicks that I'm the devil and I want to screw up the world, I would simply change the definition of happiness and love. I'm done. I could walk away and just sort of let y'all just screw it up yourselves, and you would. And that's what happens to people. Their lives have been about decreasing pain, not increasing happiness. They don't even know what it is. So this has been a real revolution for her in the past year, to discover a little bit of what happiness is and hang on to it while the pain at times is actually worse. She was talking to me about conversations that she was having with her daughter. She's noticing that she doesn't listen very well. If I'd asked her that a year and a half ago, she'd have said, well, of course I listen well. I mean, yeah, because I'm a great mother. How does she know? Because, well, her mother told her that she was a great mother, and she's as good as her mother, so she must be a great mother, and she's not in pain. She said, I've learned that I don't listen very well, that I interrupt, that I offer suggestions all the time. As a result, their conversations, the lady who's talking to me, the mother and the daughter, their relationship and their conversations have a kind of distant quality. Yeah, because it turns out the daughter doesn't like being controlled and interrogated and interrupted. Amazing. Back to my response to her. And now she's writing. Good for you. Awareness is a huge first step in eliminating a behavior. Huge. You just watch what you do, and gradually you will lose the stuff you don't want. People are very often dissatisfied with that answer. They want so what do I do? 1, 2, 3, like you would change a tire. Like occasionally an air traffic controller will have to tell a pilot what to do with a plane. Step 1, step 2, they carry in the cockpit the steps that they're supposed to do. We're used to solving problems with steps. It doesn't work like that here. You can't just try harder and listen better. No. You have to be aware, diligently aware, open aware, just naked aware. Watch what you do, and gradually you'll stop doing it. How do I know that? Because you're a good person. And basically good people, when they really want to change, not to pretend to change, I know plenty of those, if they're aware of their behaviors, they'll change them. It's really very cool to watch good people change as they become aware. You continue. Now I'm talking about the email from her to me. I wonder what else I do that drives us apart. Now, keep in mind that I know the daughter, you don't. So I have secret information you don't have access to. So I'm answering the mother. You criticize people much more than you know. People at work, service people at a restaurant, other drivers, pretty much everybody. And your daughter hates that. Now, parenthetically, I'm going to tell you, I didn't tell her at the time, but how do I know that her daughter hates that? Because it's not subtle. She told me she does. Back to mom. When you criticize everything, it reminds your daughter of her childhood, where you did this with her all day, every day. So when you do it with others, it triggers her entire PTSD. And she just withdraws from you, even if you're not criticizing her. Just like when somebody has PTSD from battle and you drop a plate, they're not dropping in response to the plate. They're pretty sure that the plate's not going to attack them and kill them. They're reacting to an entire body of pain. And that's what your daughter's doing. Also, when you criticize her, it's a separate thing. It sucks the love out of the room and makes none available for her. So can you see, this is to everybody who's listening, see what a prison the past is. It creates sources of pain everywhere. And if we're reminded of them with similar circumstances in the present where pain occurred in the past, boom, our nervous system reacts like we're being stabbed right now. And this is the source of most conflicts that happen between two people. It's one person's past reacting to the other person's past, and they just as well set the conversation on autopilot and go home. We just react, we don't choose. The other day, Donna came outside. Donna, as in my partner, my sweetie, Donna, came outside to help me do some work in the yard. She was very helpful, and I really enjoyed just being with her. We had a great time clearing stuff, piling stuff. That the job never ends, because in a forest, there's always something to do, unless you want it to just look completely forest-like. But if you want a path and, you want it to look like it had seen any attention at all, kind of like a house that had ever seen a vacuum cleaner, it never stops. The next day, I realized I had missed something. Although she and I talked often during the work outside while we were lifting, pulling, throwing things on the burn pile, I had focused more on doing the task than I had focused on her. I couldn't say I hadn't looked at her at all. I probably did, or touched her, but I hadn't paid attention to doing that. So I didn't do it as much as I would have liked to. I could easily say that, I'm not used to working in the yard with somebody there. I'm used to working alone, which is true. So focusing on the task would seem natural. That's an excuse. It doesn't cut it. It's not enough. I wasn't with her enough. I was too much with the task. No matter what the justification is, I didn't do it well. So what can I do about it? Well, I'll tell you what I did do about it. I told her about it. I said, yesterday when we were working in the yard, I didn't look at you much or touch you much, and I was focused on sticks and leaves and rocks and foolishness. She appreciated that. And the next time, I will be more aware of it. We just talked about that earlier. If we're aware of what we do that's less than loving, we will tend to improve on it. New subject. I was talking to a woman, Valerie, on Skype, who was really angry at her husband, Anthony. She said, he doesn't do anything I ask him to do. And she had actually considerably more tone in her voice than that. And I said, like, what? She gave me a list of things. Take out the garbage, play with their child if she cries, whatever. She was pretty annoyed, and so the list just came flowing out. And I said, how many times have you seen Anthony initiate things around the house? Start them. She said, well, almost never. And that's my point. And then she went off on the list again. I stopped her. I said, and that's my point too. I know what he does for a living. He has a very intense, high-pressure job where he has to produce, where he has to make hundreds of decisions a day. People depend on him, and he can't make casual mistakes. The consequences of his casual mistakes can bring down companies. He gets home, and he's exhausted from making decisions. And just as important, he doesn't know how to make home decisions. He just doesn't. He lived in a family where he never had to decide a thing. A maid cleaned things up. Everybody did things for him. He went to school and learned how to have this high-pressure job, and he's never had to deal with home or a family. So he's kind of lost in that world, just as lost as you would be in his job. You might pay attention to that sentence. You would be just as lost in his job. He's lost in yours, but you think, well, he ought to just know how to do it. And I could see how you could come to that conclusion. There's a child crying, well, then just go pick up the child. Or something needs to be picked up, well, then just pick it up. He wasn't raised that way, and it really doesn't ring a bell with him. He's not pretending. I've talked to him. I know. You continue. So you're saying I have to initiate everything. I already have 2 kids. I don't need another one. And y'all can hear the attitude behind that, and it was there. Yeah, I am saying that for a while, at least, you will have to initiate everything. Why? Because he's not joking. He doesn't know how. You are good at initiating at home. He's not. Just like I said, you couldn't initiate things at his job at work. You would bring down the American economy. He doesn't complain about that you don't know how to do his job. Ever. Never heard him complain about it, neither of you. But now you're complaining he doesn't know how to do yours. So you do your job at home. And part of that is initiating stuff. It turns out he's actually willing to help, but he doesn't know how to start it. I happen to know that, for example, he exercises regularly. He'll treadmill for 2 hours straight, which I could probably use a little bit of. Do you ever schedule? So in other words, he's treadmilling for 2 hours straight. He's fit as can be, skinny as a rail. He doesn't need the 2 hours of treadmill. Why do you think he does it? He doesn't know what else to do. I'm not kidding. When he's away from work, he doesn't know how to initiate things other than, I don't know, exercise or watch a movie. So what would it look like to initiate? Do you schedule activities with just the 2 of you where you initiate the scheduling? You sit down with him and you say, so tomorrow at 7:30, after the kids are put in bed, you and I are going to go for a walk. He will. But do you do that? Do you get a babysitter and just go somewhere? Go for a walk, rent a canoe? Don't care. You respond, well, no. Why shouldn't he? No, just told you why. Why shouldn't he? For now, at the very least, you're going to always be the initiator at home. That's your job. So for the foreseeable future, it might change. You just do it. Initiating is how much work. It just ain't that hard. You schedule some free time together to go walk in the park. I just spent as much time saying it as it would take for you to put it on a calendar and initiate it. So we're not talking about hours of work. We're talking about 30 seconds of thinking. He initiates at work, you initiate at home. I know you're looking for something to be unfair here, but it's not. You continue. But it's just stupid sometimes. I ask what he wants for dinner. He never knows. So, see, it's initiating. Again, he doesn't know how. Dinner has always just appeared for him. So I have to figure out something, and then he might not like it. So apparently, you have a skill to learn too. You need to learn how to be an initiator without the attitude. That would really help. Otherwise, that's just called kicking somebody in the head. For example, you could name a dish that you're going to cook. You could name it before he leaves for work or at lunch as it's getting closer to him coming home. And then say, would you like that? As opposed to just cooking a dish and he gets home and he goes, I don't want to have that. You can avoid all that by saying, I'm going to make egg foo young. I don't care what you, Thai rice. Ask him if he'd like it. You're done. You're in agreement. You initiated it. He cooperated with it. We have a happy dinner. Or you could complain about this, his inability to initiate things at home, until you're dead, which will come sooner because you're complaining. Which of those two choices seems smarter to you? And I'm having trouble now remembering whether this was an email or Skype, but it really sort of doesn't matter. But it must have been Skype because she smiled. She began to get it. And when you have to remind him about the garbage or whatever at home, does he listen and do it? There was a long pause and she went, kind of hanging her head a little bit. Yeah, he does. Well, then what's the beef? I've known your husband for some time, and with a little direction, he adores you. He'll do almost anything that you suggest for him to do, but he doesn't know how to start. I've seen it. He cares about you, and you resent the fact that he doesn't have a particular skill. What a waste. What a waste of time, energy, love. Get over it. You continue. Then why doesn't he show it more often without being asked? You're just asking the same question in different ways. Because he's not an initiator, kid. I also know his parents. There's no way he's going to stick his neck out and suggest something and have his head cut off, which is what happened to him at home from both parents, because I've talked to them both. Old triggers. And I've seen you cut his head off. So he's reluctant. Terrified would be a better word, to start something because he figures he's just going to be wrong. Whereas if you say, why don't you do this? Now he's going, okay, at least I don't have to deal with having my head cut off. And he just goes and does it. You've actually got a pretty good deal with this guy. Really? Because it takes seconds to say, do this or do that, or we're going to go for a walk. You continue. I think you might be onto something. Lucky me. The other day, I was arguing with him about something he hadn't done, and my 4-year-old came up to me and whispered in my ear and said, quote, Mommy, I think you're being mean to Daddy. End quote. I love it when the little children understand love and have to teach their parents. A few minutes later, she came up to me again and said, this kid's 4. Mommy, this is the second time I've had to tell you that you're being mean. This is not how we talk to husbands. This is one of my favorite quotes of all time. The 4-year-old telling mom, I don't think you're being a very loving wife here. Which is actually a good thing in many ways because you're the one that taught her what loving looks like. She's just doing it. Whereas you're resisting it. It's beautiful. You conclude. It's about the love. Love him enough to realize that he's scatterbrained about some things and that I'll just have to initiate. And it's much less work than the fussing and the anger that I'm doing now. Yeah, you got it. Really, really potent story that applies to so many of us in whatever our circumstance is, married or not, kids or not, work. Beautiful. Take what people can do and build from there, instead of insisting that they have whatever skills we have. That just doesn't work. New subject. This is an email from a woman who's been practicing real love for less than a year. She said, I had a Skype with my daughter yesterday, so I'm assuming, I don't remember particularly, that the daughter must be at least a semi-adult. When we hung up, I thought about the call, and I realized that I had changed the subject, something we've talked about here on the video chat several times, and that I wrote a blog about, that I had changed the subject a couple of times during our call. Ah, yes. My message to her was, I'm not listening to you. Not really. I felt a disconnect, but didn't wonder about it until the call was over. Man, how do I not get this when it's so glaringly obvious when my husband does this exact same thing to me? I hate it when he does it to me. Change the subject, doesn't really listen to me, and yet here I am doing it to my daughter. Well, there actually is an answer. You don't get it in the moment because with him, it hurts you. You're in your own pain. It's very distracting. And when you interrupt your daughter, you're still in your own pain, very likely from something else, maybe even from your childhood. That's the reason. Not complicated. You're focused on, in both cases, with your husband and with your daughter, on you. And that causes almost all problems, selfishness. But not the way we heard it as kids. You're so selfish, stop it. No, the selfishness that is the natural result of pain. When we're in pain, we focus on us. So what's the solution? Better listening sounds good, doesn't it? I need to be a better listener. If that worked, we would all be better listeners. Uncounted times I've heard people say that. I need to be a better listener. Like, I need to control my anger. Doesn't work because nothing's changed. You've just said what you need to do, but you don't know how to do it. Is the solution a technique for listening? This is odd. This is 3 times we've talked about this subject in this one chat. No, more awareness. Awareness of the love you have now. All the time. Awareness of how you interact with other people. Just see it. And when you feel that, when you're aware of the love that you have, you won't be distracted by your pain and will simply listen better to your daughter. Why? Because you won't be in pain. You won't be reacting to your pain. You won't be selfish, and you can listen to her, anything, to her. Cool. No guilt. And we're solving the root of the problem instead of whacking away at the leaves of it. Like when Donna and I were out in the yard, as I was talking about just a little bit ago. If there's a plant that's getting in the way, you can knock all the leaves off the plant, but it's going to regrow. No, you got to cut the thing down or uproot it or whatever. And the same is true with our behaviors that are unproductive. Got to get at the root. Pain. New subject. Today was the funeral service for my father, says this person who's writing, who was emotionally and physically abusive all my childhood. My sadness was that I didn't ever try to reach out to him and love him, not for the past 20 plus years. So here I am at the funeral service and I feel like I missed my chance, and I was sad. Maybe you missed your chance. Maybe. Depending on what you believe about the afterlife, I have no need to convince you of anything, but now there's incontrovertible evidence from uncounted near-death experiences. There's some kind of afterlife, and we get back together with the people that we were with here. You're going to see him soon enough. And if you'd been ready to reach out and love him before he died, because I know you, I believe you would have. We can only do what we're prepared to do. That's it. When I tell people what I'm capable of doing or prepared to do, and it's less than what they want. And they say, but. I go, there's no but after this is all I've got. This is all you had. The fact that he died before you were prepared is irrelevant. Really, listen to me. This is very common. We think so very much like mortals. We're in such a hurry. Most of the great accomplishments in life take a lifetime, our whole lifetime, sometimes generations. And yet, we're in such a hurry to do it in a few years. You name 20 years. That's nothing in a generational sense, generational perspective. It's nothing in eternity, as in like literally nothing. And in our hurry, we put pressure on ourselves, and then we feel worthless when we make mistakes. So we never get to the place where we can make great accomplishments like peace. That's a pretty great accomplishment. There are many people who have never experienced peace. They call the absence of conflict peace, not the same thing. You say, I know I couldn't do it any differently. You kind of know, but you're feeling guilty, so you don't know entirely. And I enjoyed hearing other people's experiences about him. He did a lot of things that touched people's lives, and they felt loved by him. I learned things I didn't know about him today. I made a judgment about him that he couldn't change from the abusive blank, blank, blank that he always was with me. And for a long time, I wasn't willing to learn anything else about him. It's hard to blame you. It was easy for him to love strangers. He could put on a little show and they would say what a great guy he was. He was your father. And the standards for loving a daughter are way higher than just entertaining people in public or, changing a tire or whatever. Changing a tire wouldn't do it for you. He wasn't just a friend with you like he was with other people. He really hurt you because he really missed out on being kind and gentle with you. And very often his frustrations with everybody else, he came home and took out on you. And you could not take the idea of being hurt again, which is why you didn't contact him. I got it. Your PTSD was caused by him. And you weren't real anxious to reach out and, make contact with the person who caused it. That's not just a trigger. That's a continuation of the trauma. You continue. As soon as we make a judgment, we quit learning, or at least seriously limit our ability to learn, don't we? Learning means making new judgments, which rocks our entire world. But we can make them with relatively little problem, making new judgments, as long as we recognize that past judgments are almost always temporary, or at the very least, incomplete. And that even as we learn new ones, we'll almost certainly learn a greater truth to replace the old ones. You continue. You just see me when I show up. You don't have a judgment about me because of all the mistakes you've seen me make. I really feel that acceptance. It's peaceful. Well, then enjoy it, kid. Feel embraced by it. It's fun for me to watch too. You conclude by saying, I wish I could have talked to him before he died. I hope he now knows that I loved him the best I could. Do you think he knows that now? Listen slow. He knows. He really knows. And you don't have to feel guilty about it anymore. New subject. This is from a woman named Nadia. I always like that name. Very, very Russian sounding. She says, I talked tonight with my sister, Shelley. We hadn't talked a lot for a while, and she really opened up. She said that during some recent, really difficult times in her life, I had not been there for her much. Suddenly, I felt like a pain like I hadn't known in a long time. During her hard time, I had lost my job. I had been going through a divorce, so I was, pretty occupied. But I still felt really bad for being called pretty much selfish. She didn't use that word, but she used every word around it, and it hurt. Pay attention here, because this is big. Now, those of you who are listening understand, like I said earlier in a previous example, I know this woman, and I know her sister and her family, so I have information you don't. So, continuing with you, the writer. When you were little, your mother was empty, blaming, critical, and raging. And then she would blame both her pain and her anger on you, her little bitty daughter. That nearly killed you. So when your sister was blaming you some, you felt all of her blaming and your entire childhood of big blaming from your mother. From a monster the size of a house, it would have felt like that to a child. When a mother is just pounding emotionally on a kid, it feels like destruction, like a hurricane. When you're in pain, you reflexively, less now than before, but you still do, get dramatic. And the drama is all about you. So during the divorce, the loss of the job, and so on, you get all, woe is me, hands waving in the air, everybody look at my pain. So you don't even see the pain of others. That's fairly normal, but your drama part is greater than for most. You're above average dramatic. In fact, it's very much like your mother's drama, which was way above average. So that would really scare your sister, Shelley, because of what your mother used to do. No blaming. Here you were all dramatic, and Shelley would just sort of back off, and on her own would say, you weren't there for me because she backed off. But in addition, you really weren't there for her because you were engaged in your pain and drama. You continued, despite my pain, though, I could see very clearly that her pain was about my mother and dad being too consumed with their pain to see her or be there for her. It wasn't about me, not primarily. Yes again, actually. It's about your parents, for both of you. And with your sister, you made a little contribution by not being there for her, but 99% of it was all about her childhood PTSD. It all ended well, you say, but afterward I wondered, have I been a bad sister? Have I been really selfish and consumed with my stuff and not loving? But I knew that wasn't what Shelley's pain was about, so I thought I would just let it go. Yeah, when you get in pain, you get selfish and dramatic, but everybody in pain reacts badly to pain. Nobody likes it. If I stab a fork in the leg of anybody, I can get them to move. So pain is almost uniformly motivating. It makes you do stuff. Your pain, the pain that your sister felt from you, is just closer to what your mother did to her and did to you. So it triggers her easily. You say, what was bizarre was how I was able to feel the pain and at the same time see that it had zero to do with this moment. That really is pretty amazing, actually. Not entirely true, because you still felt somewhat anguished by being accused of not being there. But yeah, it's very cool that you can now see that you didn't cause your sister's pain. You continue, I felt zero pain during it and zero poor me during the conversation. I suddenly felt how different it is to step into some past pain for a bit versus being a victim and dramatic and feeling life is too hard. And it was over much more quickly, too. So you didn't feel as much pain at the time. You did feel some afterward, but not as long. That's called growing up. Way to go. You're forming new judgments. Congratulations. It's wonderful. After I calmed down, you said, Shelley said a few things to me that still haven't quite sunk in, and she suggested I speak to you. She said to recognize that being selfish isn't bad. I can't really get my head around this. Let me see if I can help. Being selfish is potentially annoying. It often brings up pain in other people, triggers them, and it's no fun. But bad, I'm not sure that's a useful word. It's a reaction to protect yourself from pain. That's what it is. Calling it bad, if you want to call anything unloving bad, okay, then selfishness could be bad, but it's not helpful to describe a thing that way. Be like looking at somebody's house and saying it's too big or too small. Well, I guess it kind of depends, huh? You can describe the square footage, you can describe the color, you can describe the layout of the rooms, but too big, too small, just like describing your selfishness is bad. Not useful. You continue. I think being selfish and consumed with myself is the worst thing I could do. No. Wrong. That's wrong. You were taught that being selfish is bad, the worst thing you could do, by your mother on the occasions when she wanted you to love her. That's why she called you selfish and made you feel terrible, because it didn't serve her. So, not an unbiased opinion, and you're wrong about that. So, she told you that when you didn't make her happy, you were selfish. Being selfish and not seeing it can be unpleasant, but if you can see it and gradually choose differently, we're at awareness again, which we seem to keep talking about, you win. Your pain is in the past. It began with your mother. You're not bad. Your selfishness was generated by past pain. You conclude, my sister did explain that if I'm not loving, it just reflects my pain and fear, and it's me that gets to miss out, meaning missing the love that other people give me. But it hasn't quite shifted that deep belief. What am I missing? And this was by email, and so I responded with 72 font, which I don't commonly do, and said, what are you missing? Mother. You keep forgetting the role of your mother. Your mother taught you that stuff you got wrong. She's the one that taught you that being selfish was wrong or bad. No, being selfish was a result of her inflicting pain on you. So you got it now. To everybody who's listening, our childhoods affect us profoundly, usually for the rest of our lives. We're very fortunate if it gets better with somebody loving and teaching us. So if you have an opportunity to be loved and taught, grab hold and embrace it until your judgments change, and then everything else changes afterward. New subject. This is from a man who lives across the ocean from me. And he moved there, some time ago, from here. He said, last night I got an email from the packing company that was supposed to send all my stuff from the U.S. in a 20-foot container. I'm assuming that goes on one of those ship containers. The boss of the moving company said that it looked like a lot of my stuff would have to be left behind, or I would have to pay for a 40-foot container, which would be more expensive, and asked, should she cancel the 20-foot container? And then she gave me an hour to respond, which is pretty bloody unreasonable. But this is also called stuff happens. Stuff happens to us all the time. It rains, we're driving, we get a flat tire, we're on time to an appointment and there's a traffic jam. Stuff happens. You had planned on taking all of your stuff and you're informed at the last second, that 20-foot container we told you would work, it won't. So now we're going to have to charge you twice as much for a 40-foot container, and you have an hour. Well, stuff happens, and it always will. It rains on an outdoor wedding reception when the forecast said no chance. You get sick, you get old, or both. We want stuff not to happen. In fact, that's usually how we approach problems. We try to prevent stuff from happening. Can't be done. All we can control is what we do when stuff happens. You continue. I wrote back saying, yes, cancel. And I wrote back very quickly. I need an accurate quote for the 40-foot container, and what would it cost if I left it all in storage in the U.S. for a year? I also pointed out that this problem was caused by their surveyor, their estimator, and it would have been. It's the job of the moving company to come out and go, that'll fit in a 20-foot or a 40-foot container. How could you possibly know that unless you'd packed one? So, to repeat, you said this problem was caused by their estimator who underestimated the volume of my stuff. This illustrates the second principle of stuff just happens. It's often due to a mistake of ours, but in this case, just as often it's due to a mistake of somebody else, and it's not our fault. It's not, give me a second to dry a tear, fair. Which, how many times have I heard that? It's just not fair that it rained on my wedding. Clouds don't care about fair. They just get super saturated and drop the rain. Tough is the response to that. We still have to do what I said earlier. Stuff happens, and then we choose what we're going to do. You continue. I said that 1 hour's notice was a little unfair. Here we are with that word. As they had had over a week to work out an accurate volume. So they get a week to work out a volume, and then they give me an hour to make a decision. I got it. It really does sound unfair. I'm all over you going unfair, and who cares? But I wasn't angry or rude, and I didn't feel in the least victimized, disappointed, or angry. Now, that is notable. Wow. Nice work. And parenthetically, I'm telling those who are listening, he would not have responded this way before. He could be pretty self-righteous, and he really did his work to feel loved so that he could respond in this way. Love applies everywhere. Packing of a container, caring about a partner, raising a child, it applies to everything. You continue. When I got back home a couple of hours later, best I could do, I saw a message from her saying that my reply came too late, even though it was within the hour, and she couldn't cancel the 20-foot container. I know, hard to believe, but that's her story. She said they would just have to pack what they could. So here they haven't packed the 20-foot container yet, but it's too late to cancel it. Yes, I picked up on this subtle contradiction. You continue. I would have no way of knowing exactly what was coming and what was being left behind, because they're just going to pack it and leave out what they can't fit in it. She said, but we'll do the best we can. You could just see them packing this 20-foot container and then leaving out every family heirloom that you had. Because what do they know? Looks like junk to them. And notice the phrase, best they could. Not really comforting that somebody's ever doing your packing for you and deciding what matters to you. In fact, this would actually epitomize not fair. You would be correct about that. And yet, also not the end of the world. And you're handling it beautifully. You continue. I felt completely calm and happy and loved, despite being pretty tired, all because of the love that I've been getting from people. This is the power of love. People ask, what's going to change in my life? This would have been an explosion before. And he just went, I felt calm and happy. I wrote back, thanked her for keeping me informed. I'm becoming increasingly impressed. And told her, don't be worried or upset. Everything would work out fine. We would find a way so everybody could be happy. Wished her good night. Went to bed. How many of you listening could do that? Who knows how much of your stuff, a third, a quarter, half, is being left out in the, rain, thrown in the river, thrown in the trash. This is impressive. And how would the world be different if everyone responded like this? You continue. This afternoon, movers had not written, so I called her. She was in a meeting. Hours later, still no call, and normally I would be getting pretty victim-y and annoyed. And the rest of us can identify with that. They screwed up. Now they're not even returning his phone call. You continue, but I wasn't at all annoyed. I wasn't afraid, even though I knew I might have to argue about the charges later, which I was pretty sure would be unpleasant. But somehow I just knew it would be okay. I just knew it. Such calm. That is peace and power. I've defined power many times. The ability to make a loving choice no matter what's going on around you. And this is an example of it. Peace and power. And only love can do that. Not controlling, not anger, not working harder. You continue. She finally called, and she took all the blame. You couldn't have made her do that. Your love did that. She took all the blame, and she said they left a few things out, but no more than they had anticipated when they first gave me the first quote. And she talked to her boss's boss, and they wouldn't charge me anything for storage until the new year for the stuff that was left out of the container. And even then, it would only be like a quarter of what they usually would charge. And she sounded so happy to help me, I wanted to burst into tears. Loving really is pretty fun. Yeah, somebody might occasionally take advantage of you. Somebody might not be loving in return. It's intrinsically fun to love. You conclude, anyway, it was very lovely, and everything is going to be perfect, and you have no idea how grateful I feel for all the love I've been getting. This little thing made me feel amazing, and I'm amazed with you. What a great story. What a great story we could all learn from. This is from a man who plays in a rock band. I don't get those every day, so here we are. He says, we have a guy, Stan, in the band, and we connect very well on music, but the guy is disruptive all the time. He quits playing and just goes home. He's too tired in the middle of practice sessions. It's, I would guess, harder to play a piece when, one of the main pieces is missing, and most rock bands are like 4 people, so yeah, it'd be tough. He's late for sessions, doesn't do his practicing before he gets there, so he's prepared, or doesn't even sometimes bring the right equipment to sessions. You want to change him. You want to make him be on time. That would seem reasonable. I mean, he's part of a group, and it's only common sense and decent for him to be on time. You want to make him do that. You want him to be more reliable. But this is clearly not going to happen, is it? He's proven that it's not going to happen. So you have one question to ask. Really, it's not about it's simple. Is his musical ability really worth putting up with all the other stuff? Because all the other stuff is just sucking the love out of the band. That's what this has to do with love. It's making the band unpleasant for you and others. There's more to a band than music. Sports teams and businesses have to make this decision every day, and they do. They have a really talented player or a really talented business person, but that person is arrogant or irresponsible or can't cooperate with other people. And on the whole, having surveyed a lot of them, they discover that somebody's individual talent is not worth the emotional stress they cause. By what? Not being loving, not caring about anybody but themselves. Unlovingness causes stress. It causes PTSD in children. It reinflicts PTSD and triggers people in adulthood. Stress has a very high cost to individuals and to organizations. So this is about love. You continue. It turns out that when he leaves us early and leaves us to practice, he gambles, he drinks, he whatever. I've talked to our bass player about the situation, and she just wants to stay out of the conflict. Yeah, most people do. So clearly he puts you last in his priorities. And again, the question's the same. Is the overall package he offers worth the stress? I could tell you what my answer would be, but you're the only one who can decide. You say, I've grown so tired of his behavior. We've been together for years, but he sucks the energy from the group and any room he's in. The only reason we keep trying was that we agreed upon the law of choice, and the law of expectations. Well, you really misunderstood those principles. The law of choice. Yes, we get to choose what we want, but the part you've forgotten is when we choose, we pay the price, not everybody around us. That's why they throw a loud, violent drunk out of a bar. So if a guy comes in and he chooses to drink too much, he gets to make that choice. But he doesn't get to affect everybody else in the bar. The guy in your band, Stan, he gets to choose to be irresponsible and unreliable and all that other stuff. But see, he doesn't get to choose then to stay in the band and ruin it. Now you have a choice to make. See? Now the law of expectations also you don't understand well. You don't get to expect love from somebody. But if they're in a band, you do get to have expectations that they will contribute to making the band succeed. If I employ somebody, I have expectations about their performance for what I pay them. And I'm entitled to those expectations. And if they don't meet them, then I'm going to let them go and find somebody who will meet them. And I will find somebody. Only you know. Only you can know. But it sounds like a pretty unhealthy relationship that isn't worth having. Just from your email, you sound miserable with this guy. But your call, it affects me zero. I got a second email. And he said, as an overall package, Stan creates more stress and difficulty, and overall, we get no new finished songs recorded because of his lack of responsibility. So, often we keep somebody in our lives because of a single feature, like he's a talented guitarist or he has a really great jump shot. But when it turns out that we're paying far too high a price for that one thing, it doesn't make up for the single talent. Is the whole package worth it? That's the question. Businesses that keep a great accountant or investor or whatever, who then discover that the price is too high, they fire them. You'll recover. The businesses recover. Pretty much nobody is irreplaceable. The companies always recover from the loss of somebody who's talented like that. Pretty much. There are rare exceptions. You continue. I'm the godfather of his child, which makes it harder. Kind of irrelevant. He would only use it to manipulate you to put up with his choices. Parenthetically now, as a conclusion for everybody who's listening, they got rid of the guy in the band and they replaced him with, I'll be darned, a better player. And the band got a lot better. What does this have to do with love? The goal is to love the greatest number of people. Stan was negatively affecting everybody and making it a miserable place. So it was loving to get rid of him from the band so that the other members of the band could feel loved and be loving. And then they got a new member, and now they got a completely happy band, and everybody's loving toward each other. So by eliminating one person, 4 people are happier. It's also loving to him, the guy they got rid of, because he's living with the lie that his behavior is okay. Somebody, somewhere, has to plant their feet and start teaching him about consequences. It's true with drunks and drug addicts. Parents often write to me or call me, and they keep their drunk or drug addict child in the house so that they never experience consequences, and then the kid has no reason to quit. Throw the kid out. Throw the member of the band out, and now they can grow. Sometimes they don't, but as long as they're being enabled, they never will. As with this rock band, it's true with all of our lives. Raising our kids, being with a partner, running a company, whatever. Everything's better with love. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, what would this be like if we added more love to this situation, this circumstance, this interaction, this person. Until we ask the question, we won't do it, and we couldn't possibly know the often miraculous effects of unconditional love. We'll see you in a week.